Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Pajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Pajajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavidikacharya Ashtotar that Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila HG Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavidikacharya Ashtotar that Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavindra Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Let's see. Now, as far as I understand, Hare Krishna, welcome. Okay, you can stay there. Otherwise, I should stay on the men's side, but I think you'd be all right over there. That's good. just kidding. Oh, we have a new guest. Very good. I think we're starting a new chapter. Is it right? Yeah. Chapter 15. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 24th day of December, 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are beginning a new chapter, chapter 15, the Yoga of the Supreme Person, beginning on page 591. You're all set? 591? Okay. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Urdhvamulam Hadakshakam Ashvatam Prahur Avyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Urdhvamulam Ashvatam Prahuravyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Urdhvamulam Ashvatam Prahuravyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Urdhvamulam Ashvatam Prahuravyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. Go ahead. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Urdhvamulam Ashvatam Prahuravyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. Want to try? Shri Bhagavan Vacha Urdhvamulam Ashvatam Prahuravyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Adakshakam Urdhvamulam Adakshakam. No, he's leading. Right, you go ahead. Ashvatam Prahuravyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. Ladies, you want to try? No? Okay. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Urdhvamulam Adakshakam Ashvatam Prahuravyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. Pretty good. Do you want to try too? Yeah. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Urdhvamulam Adakshakam Ashvatam Prahuravyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. Now I understand why he chants so nicely. Go ahead, Ami. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Urdhvamulam Adakshakam Ashvatam Prahuravyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Urdhvamulam Adakshakam Ashvatam Prahuravyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. Bhakta Chad.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Urdhvamulam Adakshakam
Urdhvamulam Adakshakam
Ashvatam Praharavyayam
Ashvatam Praharavyayam
Chandamsi Yasya Parnani
Chandangsi Yasya Parnani
Yastam Veda Savedavit.
Yastam Veda Savedavit. Anyone else online there?
Bhakta Ferdi is.
Bhakta Ferdi. Let's go, Ferdi.
Sri Bhagavanu Vacha
He Bhagavana Vacha
Urdvamula Madashakam
Urdvamurna Madakshakam
Ashvatam Prahuravyayam
Ashvatam Praharavyayam
Chandamsi Yasya Parnani
Chandangsi Yasya Parnani
Yastam Veda Savedavit.
Yastam Veda Savedavit. Sri Bhagavana Vacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, said, Urdva Moolam, with roots above, Adhahat, downwards, Shakam, branches, Ashvatam, a banyan tree. Prahu, it is said, Avyayam, eternal, Chandangsi, the Vedic hymns, Yasya, of which Parnani, the leaves, Yaha, anyone who, Tam, that Veda knows, Saha, he, Vedavit, the knower of the Vedas. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. Purport. After the discussion of the importance of Bhakti Yoga, one may question, what about the Vedas? It is explained in this chapter that the purpose of Vedic study is to understand Krishna. Therefore, one who is in Krishna consciousness, who is engaged in devotional service, already knows the Vedas. The entanglement of this material world is compared here to a banyan tree. For one who is engaged in fruitive activities, there is no end to the banyan tree. He wanders from one branch to another, to another, to another. The tree of this material world has no end. And for one who is attached to this tree, there is no possibility of liberation. The Vedic hymns, meant for elevating oneself, are called the leaves of this tree. This tree's roots grow upward because they begin from where Brahma is located, the topmost planet of this universe. If one can understand this indestructible tree of illusion, then one can get out of it. This process of extrication should be understood. In the previous chapters, it has been explained that there are many processes by which to get out of the material entanglement. And up through the 14th chapter, we have seen that devotional service to the Supreme Lord is the best way. Now, the basic principle of devotional service is detachment from material activities and attachment to the transcendental service of the Lord. The process of breaking attachment to the material world is discussed in the beginning of this chapter. The root of this material existence grows upward. This means that it begins from the total material substance, from the topmost planet of the universe. From there, the whole universe is expanded, with so many branches representing the various planetary systems. The fruits represent the results of the living entity's activities, namely religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. Now, there is no ready experience in this world of a tree situated with its branches down and its roots upward, but there is such a thing. That tree can be found beside a reservoir of water. We can see that the trees on the bank reflect the water with their branches down and roots up. In other words, the tree of this material world is only a reflection of the real tree of the spiritual world. This reflection of the spiritual world is situated on desire, just as the tree's reflection is situated on water. Desire is the cause of things being situated in this reflected material light. One who wants to get out of the material existence must know this tree thoroughly through analytical study. Then he can cut off his relationship with it. This tree, being the reflection of the real tree, is an exact replica. Everything is there in the spiritual world. The impersonalists take Brahman to be the root of this material tree. And from the root, according to Sankhya philosophy, come Prakriti, Purusha, then the three gunas, then the 5 gross elements, Pancha Mahabhuta, then the 10 senses, Dashendriya, mind, etc. In this way, they divide up the whole material world into 24 elements. If Brahman is the center of all manifestations, then this world, this material world, is a manifestation of the center by 180 degrees, and the other 180 degrees constitute the spiritual world. The material world is the perverted reflection, so the spiritual world must have the same variegatedness, but in reality. Therefore, both Prakriti and Purusha must be there. In the spiritual world, however, Prakriti is the Supreme Lord's internal energy, and the Purusha is the Supreme Lord himself. That is explained in the Bhagavad Gita 8.22, Purusak Sapadak Partha. The difference between the spiritual and material manifestation is that the former is eternal and the latter is temporary. A reflection is temporary, for it is sometimes seen and sometimes not seen, but the origin from whence the reflection is reflected is eternal. The material reflection of the real tree has to be cut off. When it is said that a person knows the Vedas, it is assumed that he knows how to cut off attachment to this material world. If one knows that process, he actually knows the Vedas. One who is attracted by the ritualistic formulas of the Vedas is attracted by the beautiful green leaves of the tree. He does not exactly know the purpose of the Vedas. The purpose of the Vedas, as disclosed by the personality of Godhead himself, is to cut down this reflected tree and attain the real tree of the spiritual world. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual world, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So this is a very famous and illuminating analogy that Krishna gives here. This comparison of this world to a reverse banyan tree. Banyan tree, as you probably know, can be very multi-branched. It can grow and grow and grow very large. So the whole idea, Prabhupada's famous phrase of the perverted reflection or distorted reflection. Now, how is it a distorted reflection? Well, we know that we have, anyway, if you know something about Krishna Kanda, you know about the different rasas or the different relationships one can have with Krishna. Servant, friend, parent and child, and of course a conjugal relationship, and also just Shantaras, being not actually engaged in active devotional service, but being in relation to Krishna, such as his flute or something like that. So we experience those here. We have friendships. We all experience the relationship of a parent and child, either as the child to the parent or the parent to the child, but the relation is there. One word that is used is filial, probably is filial affection. Filial affection literally means in English the love of the child for the parents, not vice versa. But the other one is parental love. The filial love is the child's love for the parent. So both of those are there. So what do we experience? We experience these relationships in the material world, but we also experience that they come and go. Before you become a mother or father, you can't have parental affection for a child. It's temporary. And afterward, that goes on for some time. And it actually lasts longer than the filial relation, really, in a sense. I remember my mother. I grew up in a very nice family. My parents were very affectionate, supportive, and like that. So I recalled, many years ago, I had a very strong attachment to my mother and father. And as I grew up, of course, I was still attached to them, but not in the same way. As I grew into an adult and they grew into their old age. But I remember after my father passed, and I would visit my mother. She was well into her 80s by that time, and I was serving in the Miami temple for some time as an editor, working on the Srimad Bhagavatam with Gopi Puranadana Prabhu and Hridayananda Das Goswami. It was a great opportunity for me. And they had a flight, believe it or not, a round-trip flight to New York from Miami for $69 at that time. I don't think that airline lasted very long, but I took advantage of it. And so I visited my mother, and she would always, she would always be very, affectionate to me. And as soon as I came into the house, oh, do you want something to eat? I said, okay, make me some baked potatoes or something with butter, okay, that I could offer then. So she still saw me as a child, in a sense, you know what I'm saying? It was that same kind of parental relationship, love. And I was fortunate. I mean, as she grew older, she became a little frailer. My brother, who was older than me, and he lived in Ithaca, New York. He was established there. He had some real estate going on and everything. So there came a point where my mother couldn't take care of herself, and so she stayed with him, and she was in an assisted living thing where you can cook for yourself, you have your own, like that. So I would periodically visit her, and I remember she was very supportive of my Krishna consciousness. She subscribed to the Back to Godhead magazine, and I remember I visited her. I brought her one of those old tapes when we played the tape recorders, the actual tapes. So I had a tape of Prabhupada doing Hare Krishna Kirtan. I put it in. It was, I think, the first recording, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. So we put that on, and we were dancing together. And she was chanting. So we had a very nice relationship. But at a certain point, of course, it comes to an end. She passed. And it was temporary, and that's really the whole point, is that this banyan tree and everything about it, all the branches and all the intricate things, because we're all in the tree, but it's temporary. It doesn't last forever. I mean, there's a period. If you read Prabhupada books, the creation. Eventually, there's a great annihilation, and all of us, we lose our material bodies. We don't get another one right away, and we merge into the body of Mahavishnu, and we wait there until the next creation, which can be millions and millions of years. So we're not dreaming or anything. We're alive, and all of our karma is still there, latent, and eventually come out and resume. Brahma creates all that. It's complicated. But that's the point, is that the spiritual world, the real world, ultimately, is Satchit Ananda. It's eternal, full of bliss, and full of knowledge. And so that in Goloka Vrindavan, there's so many living entities. They have their loving relationship with Krishna, and they're also related to each other, but they're all collectively glorifying Krishna and loving him. And it's completely fulfilling. And it's also variegated. It's not like it's hackneyed or anything. Every day there's varieties of pastimes, right? Krishna goes out with his friends and they're playing various ways, So it's ever fresh. Whereas this world sometimes, it gets got something new. It gets old, and eventually, of course, we leave this body, and ordinarily, if we're not practicing Krishna consciousness, we'll take another body. Maybe it'll be a human body if we're pious and like that. But the point is, it ends, and we don't remember our previous births, and we start anew, and it's a whole different thing. So Krishna will explain to a couple of verses that we need to cut off this tree, our entanglement in this tree, by the sword or the axe of detachment. Because it's attachment, material attachment, that keeps us bound and entangled in this tree and in this material world. And that attachment is itself a perverted reflection of our eternal attachment and love for Krishna and the world. So it's really a question of purifying our desires. The whole process one of purification. I would be chanting this verse yesterday, and it's very pertinent. Teachings of Lord Chaitanya to Sanatana Goswami. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunoi Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Kodaye Udoi. That the eternal perfection of love for Krishna, which is our final goal and which includes liberation and everything else, is not something that has to be brought from outside. It's not something artificial. It's already intrinsic within us. But we haven't, it's covered now for many, many births. So our eternal perfection is already there. And so how do we realize it? Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte, by purifying the consciousness, Shuddha Chitte, by the process of devotion service, beginning with hearing. Shravanadi, hearing, chanting, remembering. But those the top three, and of course the others, they're the other 6. But those are the prime ones. So by hearing and chanting, especially the Hare Krishna mantra, we purify the consciousness and we gradually awaken that relation with Krishna, which means that we become more and more attached to Krishna and everything related to Krishna. And our material attachments wane. They become eclipsed. Eventually they say, well, God, how did I ever was I involved in that? You know what I mean? I don't want to know about that anymore. So it's a purification, or I like to use this word, sublimation. Sublimation, make sublime. Our attachments. So we don't want to become free, and it's very artificial to become free of activities or any attachment. That's a Mayavad idea, that the ultimate perfection is Brahman, merging into Brahman, which is free of varieties. That's where it says, Nirvishesha, Shunyavadi, Pachadesha, Tarine. By Srila Prabhupada giving us the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, the process of bhakti, yoga has taught by him and systematized and so wonderfully explained by Rupa Goswami and others, that we purify our desires and we systematically engage our senses, mind, intelligence, and everything else by connecting it to Krishna for service. And that's really the art, and we find that we become much more peaceful and happy and steady because we have this mission in life, and we're experiencing every day or even moment to moment the joy that comes from serving Krishna and being Krishna conscious. So that's what is being will be explained here, centering it first on this wonderful analogy of the upside down banyan tree reflected in a smooth pool of water, not a river so much because it's always flowing, but a reservoir of water. And we'll learn some of the important truths here. Krishna will talk about Mamai Vangsha Jiva Loka, that in this chapter, that all living beings are my angsha, my part and parcels. And in that sense, just as we have a beautiful example of the ocean out here, if you walk out there with a little vial or a little cup, and you get some ocean water, bring it back, you analyze it, you'll find it's just like the big ocean. It's salty and it's got all the other elements. So, or another analogy is the sunshine. It's made of these little particles, little photons, right? An infinite number. And they each one have a little bit of heat and a little bit of light, just like the big sun. So we are angsha of Krishna. We have his qualities in infinitesimal degree. But that's why we have such an affinity for him. Because, in many ways we have consciousness, we have desire, we have activities, all of these things. But because it's being mediated by the material energy, it tragically changes, and ultimately everything that we are attached to is taken away. And so there's birth, old age, disease, and death. And we cannot be in our Satchidananda life or consciousness when we identify with this body. So the answer is not to just think that, well, I just have to void out everything or get rid. No, it's to use the body. What is that verse Rupa Goswami says? Anasakta savishayan yataham abhuyunjata nirbandha Krishna sambandha yuktam vairagyamuchyate. So with everything that we have at our disposal, beginning with our, and we have it's our human intelligence that gives us a chance to understand this knowledge. We use our senses, what is that? Prana, artha, diya, vacha. With our life force, with our wealth, with our intelligence, and with our words, we serve Krishna, and we try to do good for everybody. Krishna said he's walking in the forest with his friends, and he's glorifying the trees. The trees are super tolerant, right? Someone can come and cut them down, they don't object, And they're generous, they're giving their fruits, the flowers, the shade, you see? So he idealized it. He says, Etavat janmasapalyam dehinami hidehishu prana ata deyavacha sheya achananam sada. says, here's how one can fulfill one's human life. He said, Etava janma sapalyam, how your birth can be fruitful. With your prana, your life force and energy, arta, your wealth, diya, your intelligence, and your words, always doing good for other embodied souls. Dehinami dehishu, right? Those who are embodied in this world. Shreya achananam sada. So you always try to give them the ultimate good. Now, what is that Shreya? This is what we don't know. That's why we need the knowledge. Shreya, Prabhupada always give this contrast of Shreyas and Prayas. Prayas is some immediate good, or a little, something that you have to aspire for, but ultimately it's temporary. Wealth and what is it? We have, beauty and wealth, good birth, and high education, all these things. These can be, aspired for to be used in Krishna service, but in and of themselves, they form attachments to this world that we want to try to, So the Shreyas is the ultimate good, and what is that ultimate good? Revival of our pure love for Krishna and return to the spiritual world. As Prabhupada's famous phrase, going back home, back to Godhead. Now that's important. That's the home. We were there. We're exiles here. It's not our natural environment. So that's the ultimate goal of human life, the ultimate goal of life in general. But only in human life do we have the intelligence to understand this knowledge and actually mold our life in such a way that we make progress, or even in this one lifetime, become pure enough to go back home and not come back again. Repeatedly, Krishna says, once you go back, once you get back there, you don't come back again. And Prabhupada will sometimes quote this little English motto, once burned, twice shy. And he would be given the example. Okay, the little baby is in the mother's arms, she's cooking, and the baby wants to put his hand in the fire, said, no. But still, says, okay. So he puts it in, and never again, right? And from then on, I don't want to do that anymore. So we've been burned in this material world. And having gone back to it, say, it's not that we would think of our life here, but there's enough of a memory to, okay, I tried it once, no more, I'm not going back home, back to the material world. So let's, if there are no questions on this verse in purport, we'll go on. Krishna expands on this analogy, and then he gives invaluable instruction in text 3 and 4. So text 2. Adaschordvam prasvatastasya shakha guna pravidha vishaya pravala adastamulyananusanthatani karmana bandhini manushya loke. The branches of this tree extend downward and upward, nourished by the three modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of the senses. This tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruit of actions of human society. Purport: the description of the banyan tree is further explained here. Its branches spread in all directions. In the lower parts, there are variegated manifestations of living entities, human beings, animals, horses, cows, dogs, cats, etc. These are situated on the lower parts of the branches, whereas on the upper parts are the higher forms of living entities, the demigods, Gandharvas, and many other higher species of life. As a tree is nourished by water, so this tree is nourished by the three modes of material nature. Sometimes we find that a tract of land is barren for want of sufficient water, and sometimes the tract is very green. Similarly, where particular modes of material nature are proportionately greater in quantity, the different species of life are manifested accordingly. The twigs of the tree are considered to be the sense objects. By the development of the different modes of nature, we develop different senses, and by the senses we enjoy different varieties of sense objects. The tips of the branches are the senses, the ears, nose, eyes, etc., which are attached to the enjoyment of different sense objects. The twigs are sound, form, touch, and so on. the sense objects. The subsidiary roots are attachments and aversions, which are byproducts of different varieties of suffering and sense enjoyment. The tendencies toward piety and impiety are considered to develop from these secondary roots, which spread in all directions. The real root is from Brahmaloka, and the other roots are in the human planetary systems. After one enjoys the results of virtuous activities in the upper planetary systems, he comes down to this earth and renews his karma, or fruit of activities for promotion. This planet of human beings is considered the field of activities. So, very complicated. It's just very complicated. And you can see, even in just our, I've just celebrated my 78th birthday, so I've been around a while. And I can see how, all the changes that have taken place over the years. I mean, I grew up, my mother was a reading teacher. I used to read New York Times every day from when I was about 7. And, get all this news, and I was aware of world affairs and local affairs and all these different things. And there's always, and I can remember how, my desires and involvement evolved. I wasn't, frankly, we were atheistic. We were born in a Jewish family culturally, but we were, deviated. I don't know what you say. So there wasn't a sense of God, but there was definitely a sense of the need to strive to get good grades in school, so you'll be nicely situated. That whole thing. And fortunately, a decent brain on my shoulders, so I got into University of Chicago. And I had a full scholarship and everything. Oh boy, I really made it now, But I wasn't into it. I was deviated because there was a war in Vietnam. I don't know if historically, that was a big thing for 12 years in America. And I was just horrified by the whole thing. The unnecessary slaughter and all these things. It was just horrible. So I couldn't really fully engage and become involved in the idea of me getting a great education and getting success in life, because our family, we were aware, trying to help other people. So I demonstrations and all these different things. So even when I went to college, I couldn't get wholly into it, because I said, I'm going to turn my draft card in and I'm going to get arrested anyway. And so what's the point? Let me just, so I dropped out. But, that didn't work out. I got a crummy job, and I was just sort of, and after a while I said, what am I doing here working in this warehouse, I got a good brain. So I said, let me go back to school. So I go back to New York University, local school. We were from Long Island. But still, I was just involved in all of this demonstrations against the war. That was the big thing. And, so gradually, I lived, believe it or not, those who know the history of ISKCON, there wasn't, there's no great advantage, but Krishna moved me in that direction. I lived literally 2 blocks from Tompkins Square Park on the Lower East Side of New York. Not Tompkins Square Park. Become a great place of pilgrimage. But, I wasn't religious. But so I would hear the Hare Krishnas. They'd be on the street because they had the temple, And I was a street musician. I would play the flute, believe it or not, on the street looking for, and I would hear the ching, 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 ching. So that sounds like a pretty good beat. Let me go. That's just the Hare Krishnas. Forget that, That's where I was at that time. But eventually, by Krishna's grace, I became down with a serious case of hepatitis, and I was in the hospital for a month. And I was just at a real low point, The war was still going on. Nixon was elected. Oh, my God, So I came out, and I was just focused on trying to get my health back. And at that point, yoga was becoming popular. Hatha yoga, it was just becoming popular in America. So I looked in the Yellow Pages. I don't know if you're old enough to know about the Yellow Pages. It's like, you remember the Yellow Pages? Yeah. So I was in Long Island, but the only closest one was in New York. The closest studio for the Hatha Yoga. So I went there, and believe it or not, it was run by a devotee who then became quite famous. His name is Amalabhakta Swami. He wasn't Amalabhakta Swami then. He was known as Shiva Prem, but I think he was a sannyasi in the thing. So anyway, that's where I started it, and I gradually evolved from that studio to another studio, and eventually I ran into somebody who was into bhakti yoga, but he was a Ram Bhakta. He was in the Ramakrishna mission. They have a big building, in New York City. I would go there and everything. I even bought the translation of Shankaracharya's Sharika Bhashya of the you know that, the Vedanta Sutra. Lord Chaitanya says anyone who reads the Sharika Bhashya is finished. His devotional service is finished. I bought the book, but I never read it. Anyway, I don't want to get into my whole story. But Krishna moved me here and there, and this fellow, who was a Ram Bhakta, he also knew about the Hare Krishna temple. So he said, why don't we go down there? So I had a car, we drove down to Brooklyn, that was my first exposure, there was the Sunday feast and all the deities. It was a bit much for me at first. But eventually I became addicted to halva. They had some tremendous cooks there at that time. So I had to keep coming back to get the halva every week, And I had some very nice devotees who would preach to me and get books, So eventually I said, what am I doing outside? So I joined up, and luckily that was where the books were being put together. That was where the BBT was. It wasn't called the BBT then, it was called ISKCON Press. The BBT eventually evolved from there, Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. And so I became a proofreader and also eventually an editor for Back to Godhead. And ever since, that was in 1975. And ever since, I've been working on the books here and there. And it's been, I feel so fortunate to be able to even have anything to do with producing these books, these wonderful books, Srila Prabhupada. So, back to our text here. I don't want to tell you any more about me, that's enough. But Krishna will talk about it, because the whole point is that we're entangled in this tree. There's so many attachments. And it's those attachments that we cultivate in this life that are unfulfilled, bring us back again. And especially in this age, if we have no information like this, or we're not in the part of a devotee family, then we'll perform sinful activities. We may very well lose the human form of life. We may go down and then have to come back up again. And then there's this verse, which I often quote in this class. Labdva sudurlamamidam bahusambhavante manusham artadam anityam abhiya dhira. Turnam yateta napateta namityavat nikshe yasaya vishaya kalasarvatakshat. I think Krishna speaks this verse in the Bhagavad Gita. It's in the 11th canto. So he said, Labdva sudurlabham, you have attained this very difficult to attain human form of life after many, many births. Bahusambhavante manusham. Same word in English, man, human being. And what's the value? Artadam. It can give you the real value in life, the ultimate goal. Not money or anything, but the ultimate value of knowledge of Krishna and love for God. But you have to be sober. Artadam anityam. It's not eternal. It's temporary. Time is going. We have to use be intelligent and use our time. So one has to be dhira, sober-minded and thoughtful. And having understood, having come in touch with the devotee and understood, then turnam yateta. It says immediately, without wasting any time, strive. Yateta. Napateta namityavat. As long as you're still alive and have your senses about you. So what should we strive for? Again, this word shreyas. But here he says niksheyasa. There's prayas and shreyas, but then there's the ultimate good, which is liberation from birth, old age, disease, and death, and return home back to Godhead. Because then very soberly he says at the end, Vishayasavatarva saksyat, because in all these other births you've enjoyed all these different objects of the senses, but what has it gotten you? Birth, old age, disease, and death. So we have to cultivate the detachment from these distractions and use the very senses that we're trying to enjoy in sense clarity to serve Krishna's purpose. Connect with him. That's what it means with yoga, bhakti yoga. And then the purification will take place quickly, and free of the material attachments, will be completely attached to Krishna, and at the end of this life, go back to Godhead. That's what's, and he's going to talk about this, the need for, what is it? Nirmana moha jita sanga dosha. That's going to come up in text 5, I think. The process of becoming detached from this world. All right, let's go on to text 3 and 4. Narupamasye hetatopa labhyate nanto nachadi nacha sampratishta Ashvatthamenam suvarudha moolam asanga shastrena dudhena chidva tatakpadang tat padimagitavyam yasmin gatana navartanti bhuyaha tameva charyam purusham papadye yatak pravitti pasata purani. The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down this strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead from whom everything began and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial. Purport. It is now clearly stated that the real form of this banyan tree cannot be understood in this material world. Since the root is upwards, the extension of the real tree is at the other end. When entangled with the material expansions of the tree, one cannot see how far the tree extends, nor can one see the beginning of this tree. Yet one has to find out the cause. I am the son of my father is the son of such and such a person, etc. By searching in this way, one comes to Brahma, who is generated by God, the Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. Finally, in this way, when one reaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is the end of research work. One has to search out that origin of this tree, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, through the association of persons who are in knowledge of that Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then, by understanding, one becomes gradually detached from this false reflection of reality. And by knowledge, one can cut off the connection and actually become situated in the real tree. The word asanga is very important in this connection because the attachment for sense enjoyment and lording it over the material nature is very strong. Therefore, one must learn detachment by discussion of spiritual science based on authoritative scriptures, and one must hear from persons who are actually in knowledge. As a result of such discussion in the association of devotees, one comes to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then the first thing one must do is surrender to Him. The description of that place whence having gone, one never returns to this false reflected tree is given here. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the original root from whom everything has emanated. To gain the favor of that Personality of Godhead, one has only to surrender. And this is a result of performing devotional service by hearing, chanting, etc. He is the cause of the extension of the material world. This has already been explained by the Lord Himself, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavaha. I am the origin of everything. Therefore, to get out of the entanglement of this strong banyan tree of material life, one must surrender to Krishna. As soon as one surrenders unto Krishna, one becomes detached automatically from this material extension. Now, how to develop that in this world? The process of chanting the holy name, the Hare Krishna mantra. It's inconceivable. I mean but this is a central fact, and this is why the process works. And it's inconceivable that the name Krishna and Krishna Himself are identical. That's just, it's beyond our understanding rationally. But we experience it. If we sincerely chant and hear, then then the attraction grows for that sound, for doing it. There's a certain pleasure that's derived. And simultaneously, there'll be a growing indifference for external attachments. And that vairagya is essential. It comes with knowledge. And we find, I like to refer to this verse in the first canto, second chapter, Sutta Goswami is asked by the sages of Naimisharanya, what is that dharma by which the soul can be fully satisfied? You see. And the answer, of course, is the Savai Pungsang Paro Dharmo Yato Bhakti Hokshaje. Ahaitukya Patayata Yamasupatsidati. That dharma by which the soul can be satisfied is bhakti. Savai Pungsang Paro Dharma Yato Bhakti Hokshaje, which engenders devotional service or the love for the transcendent Lord. That's what Hokshada means. But as a qualification, there has to be a hoitaki and a pratiyata. It can't be motivated by some material desire. We can worship Indra in order to get the heavenly planets or the gods, but we shouldn't try to worship Krishna in that way. Because the greatest boon that we can get from Krishna is the sublimation of all our material desires into one desire. What's pleasing to Krishna? What's pleasing to the Krishna's representative? You see, that's a perfection. So, Lord Chaitanya, Krishna himself, seeing the degradation of the people of this age, he made it very simple. You don't have to go up to the Himalayas and practice like in the sixth chapter, Krishna gave the Ashtanga yoga process. But Arjuna rejected it. He said, Chanchalamimana Krishna Pramati Balavadradham. The mind is so powerful, it's like a hurricane wind. Try to control a hurricane wind is impossible. I don't think I can do it by this process. So Krishna first said, yeah, you can do it, but practice, And then Arjuna said, well, what if I fail? I'll give up my life as a Kshatriya and go off to the Himalayas and I'll fail there. I've given my Kshatriya life up. I failed at that. I'm like a riven cloud. So Krishna says, no. Even if you fail, you'll be born in a nice family, a wealthy but pious family, or even a family of yogis or Brahmins, and you'll continue, you see. But Arjuna, he couldn't accept it. No, I can't do it. So then at the end of the chapter, Krishna says, and I like to say, when Krishna chants this verse, you can almost hear Arjuna give a real sigh of relief. Oh, okay. Yogi nama visarve sham mangate anantaratmana shraddhavam bhajate yamam samayukta momata. Of all the yogis, the best one is one who always thinks of me within his heart and worships me with great faith and transcendental love. You see, I consider him to be the best yogi. So Arjuna said, well, that's me already. I love Krishna. I mean, we're best friends, and so he. Then that's the resolution of that. He's not going to practice Ashtanga yoga. But then in the next chapter, next verse, which is the first verse of the seventh chapter, he says, okay, now I'm going to teach you how your mind can naturally be attached to me. Because after all, it's one thing to sit down, have to control the mind, breathing, and so force the mind to fix it on the Atma or Brahman or whatever you're thinking of, But because Krishna is naturally attractive, if we have a way that we can naturally become attracted to him, then that solves the whole problem. The mind is automatically attracted. If you really love someone, then your mind automatically goes there. So that's what bhakti is, and it's organic and it's working. And so we'll read. I think we're running out of time now. I want to read it because I have on these classes I always end with a little poems, a few English poems. I don't know if you've heard them yet, but so we'll leave a little time for that. But tomorrow, of course, tomorrow we have a special program, and it's Christmas Day. This is Christmas Eve. So you're all invited. And miraculously, in this modest home, we invited everybody in the Sunday feast, and everybody who gets the newsletter, which are hundreds of people, to all come to this modest home tomorrow, Leela Shakti's place in Bhaktavatsal, for a festival of chanting and prasadam, and maybe a few poems. So miraculously, everyone's going to be able to fit in there, I'm sure. We'll figure it by Krishna's mercy. So, but in the meanwhile, let's see, what would be appropriate, especially for Christmas Eve? I don't know. So, here's a poem, since we have some newcomers today, and well, you've all heard it before, but this I wrote, and it's not based on directly on any verses or anything, although I have one. Where Krishna lives, felicity abounds. With pure simplicity and loving sensibility, all serve him with humility. But when a living entity rejects his true identity and out of sheer stupidity surrenders to cupidity, he loses all sagacity, and with it all capacity to understand reality or curb his sensuality. Abandoning humility, he touts his own ability, forgetting his fragility and fortune's volatility. Immersed in asininity for what seems an infinity of lives devoid of piety, he suffers in anxiety till contact with God's devotee, perhaps of utmost brevity, awakens his affinity for words of the divinity. Perceiving the futility of all his imbecility, the soul regains his sanity and casts away his vanity. Endowed with new humility, he serves with all ability and growing spontaneity his guru and the deity. Regaining his identity, the wayward living entity returns to the fraternity of Krishna for eternity. Hare Krishna. Yeah, that's always a... So then, okay, so we have 1 minute. So I'll do a selection of verses from the Kevalashtaka, which are 8 verses about the holy name. So, this is my favorite one. It says, remember that our final breath may come at any time, no matter if we're old and sick. Oh, let me see if I can remember the Sanskrit. Nikshvase nahi vishvaso kadaradho bhavishyati kirtani mata balyad hare namaiva kevalam. Remember that our final breath may come at any time, no matter if we're old and sick or in our youthful prime. So young and old alike should chant the name incessantly. The holy name of Sri Hari is surely all that be. Lord Sri Hari forever dwells wherever devotees, whose hearts are fixed in him and free of all impurities, uplift their voices high and sing his name in ecstasy. The holy name of Sri Hari is surely all that be. Alas, what sorrow, what great pain! Alas, what sorrow, what great pain! The worst calamity for people to forget the holy name of Sri Hari. Although the name's a priceless gem, mere broken glass they see. The holy name of Sri Hari is surely all that be. Just fill your ears fill them with the name of Sri Hari. Just chant the name with all sincerity. Just sing the name, just sing the holy name eternally. The holy name of Sri Hari is surely all that be. It makes this world appear like bits of straw upon the ground. Resplendently it reigns supreme, divinity and sound. It's filled with transcendental bliss and peerless purity. The holy name of Sri Hari is surely all that be. Inspired to glorify, this one I wrote, because actually this Ashtaka is part of 100 verses that he wrote. The person who wrote these verses is named Sri Nilakanta Goswami, an associate of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And maybe it was Bhaktivinoda Thakur who pulled these out of the 8 out of the 100. But there's no 9th verse, So I wrote it. Inspired to glorify the holy name of Sri Hari, Sri Nilakanta wrote this hymn in Sanskrit poetry. I pray that those who hear this lowly version made by me will chant the holy name of Sri Hari in ecstasy. So that's my little offering for tonight. So let us mobilize now. The curtains will open momentarily, and we'll have a nice kirtan and Shri Radha Girindhari, Gauranatai, and Jagannath Baladev Subhadra. You know who they are, right? Okay. Okay, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much.